today we're going to be talking about how to use Microsoft's Excel to analyze data in a science classroom. I'm going to start by clicking on the Start menu. You'll notice that I'm using Windows XP. If you have a newer version of Windows, Vista, or Windows 7, you're going to see some things that are slightly different. Specifically, you have a search button here that will allow you to quickly type in Excel and find the program you're looking for. Mine happens to be in the Quick Start menu because I use it fairly frequently, but if yours isn't, you can click on All Programs and navigate to wherever yours might be. Mine happens to be in a folder called Microsoft Office Tools and Excel 2007. This opens up Microsoft Excel. Now this tool or program is a giant spreadsheet. It's a big table. It does various different things, and one of the things I'm going to show you that it does is it's useful for us to create a sheet that we can hand out to students, but even more than that, and we're going to see how that works today. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to insert. I'm going to go into the Insert menu, and I'm going to insert a text box. And I'm going to just click here and drag and create a text box. The reason I'm doing this is I want to create a worksheet, a sheet that I can hand out to students. Excel is just a giant table, and so sometimes it's useful to be able to put things kind of on top of that table to be able to see them better. I'm going to type gas laws and hit enter and type measuring the mass of gas. So this is going to be the title and description of my little lab. I can use the tools here to change the font, change the font size, and even the font color if I were to choose to. But I can do anything that I can adjust the font, I can do inside that text box. Now that I have the text box in there, I'm going to show you something else that I like to use frequently with Excel when I'm creating a handout with it, is I'm going to choose the Office button, and in the Office button there's a print option that allows me to do a print preview. This displays what my page is going to look like. You'll notice that my text box is right there with my text in it. When I close this print preview, you'll also notice that there's a dotted line that has appeared. And if I scroll down, you'll notice that that dotted line appears here as well. What this is when you print a spreadsheet, it prints multiple pages that are kind of hooked together, and they used to take these and tape them all together, or they'd tape multiple sheets of paper to create these giant spreadsheets. And actually they came from using this on blackboards, on giant blackboards. They'd just scribble numbers across the top of the blackboard. But I like it because it shows me where the edges of my page are, so as I'm creating and developing this handout, I kind of know how large I can make my different items, so I can make that text box a little bit bigger. The next thing I want to insert, and just to show you can do it, I can insert all kinds of other things. We're going to come show you some more of these, but I'm going to insert a picture. I went out on the web and I created a folder called Gas Laws, and I got some images that relate to my lab. This lab is one that I found through Arbor Scientific, and I've actually used it in class, but it's been a while, so I can create this little, bring this image in, and now I have a handout that's starting to kind of come together. What this lab does is it takes what is called a fizz keeper, and you put it on a plastic bottle, a 20-ounce, 1-liter, or 2-liter bottle that's got a normal standard size head, and you can drop a thermometer in there if you choose. But this first part of this lab, and the temperature will alter as you pump in air, and that's related to Boyle's and Charles and the combined gas laws. And we're going to specifically look, though, at how we can measure the mass of this. So I'm going to create the actual table that we're going to use. So I'm going to click right here, and now I've selected in that cell. That's the way that Excel works. Excel is made up of columns and rows, and each column or row intersects at a specific point, and that's called a cell. That cell holds data. I'm going to put data in this one that happens to be alphanumeric data, or it's a label. Is that what the term is? It's number of pumps. So the number of pumps that are going to be used, and we're going to then measure also the mass in units. Now what you'll notice as I did that, it looks like it cut off the S of pumps. Well, it really didn't. If I select that cell again, you'll notice that the entire data that's in that cell is still there. It just doesn't display all of it. That's because each of these column widths is set to be a specific width. Now, luckily, we can adjust that width. I can click right here between the two columns on that line, and I can manually change the column width. I also have some options for doing this non-manually. If I double-click on that same line, it will automatically adjust that entire column to fit the contents of the largest data point. So if I've got pi to 77 places in one particular place, it'll adjust it and make it that large. But I can also manually adjust it so that if I want pi to display only to a few places, it won't do that. And it will automatically truncate the number and round it to the appropriate spot as you hide decimals. That can be really useful for using large numbers in your calculations, but only displaying the first couple of decimal points. So I can also add here another column, and I could put temperature if I wanted to. And again, I can automatically adjust that whole column to do that. Now for this particular lab, I don't need to measure temperature because all we're going to have the students do is pump in a number of pumps and then adjust or measure the mass of their new item. So for 0, I'm going to put in that it started at 40. Now I'm making these up because I don't really remember, since it's been a while since I've done this lab. But we are going to talk about how this is useful for us to do. Now it's not looking very nice and pretty right now, so I'm going to show you another feature of Excel. I'm going to highlight this, and I'm going to select Cell Styles and just quickly grab the heading 1. And you'll notice it automatically adjusted, but it also changed the size, so I have to adjust my column widths again. I'm going to put now here the number of pumps. I want them to go up in increments of 5. One thing I love about Excel is this little feature. I can click and select the cells just by clicking and dragging. And then you'll notice at the corner of that selected area, there's a funny little mark. And if I move my cursor over it, my cursor will change. This is called the fill handle. This fill handle will match patterns that it detects, and I can take this up until I get the number of pumps I want it to be, in this case 100. And it'll automatically fill in according to the pattern that I've already selected. This also works with things like days of the week, months, and any numerical pattern that it can detect a pattern in. If I were to use the fill handle if I were to use the fill handle with just the 40, it works as a copy tool and just fills the same data in to all those points. We don't want to do that, so we're going to leave that out. Now that kind of brings me to the conclusion of this particular, oh no, one more item actually. Now my data, if I go to the print preview right now, I don't yet have a sheet that kids could use really well to fill things out. So I'm going to close this print preview because I want to have some lines around this data. So again, I'm going to select the area that I want to adjust, like I did with the headings. I'm going to make sure I'm on the Home ribbon in Excel 2007 and choose the Cell Styles, and I'm just going to choose Output. And it adjusted all those items, which is kind of nice, so that when I do a print preview now, you'll notice that I actually have a pretty nice handout to hand to kids. I could adjust things and put in a header and footer, put name, but now they have a sheet that they can fill in their data and even leave a space down below. I could put another text box that said notes. In fact, let's do that really quickly. I'm going to insert a text box and just label this text box Notes. Whoops, I better spell notes correctly. And do a print preview to see what we look like. And so now I have quite a nice little handout that I could hand to students, and they could fill it out and use it as their data sheet as they're doing the lab. The thing that really becomes powerful with Excel, though, is not just that I can use it to make worksheets. I can do that with any You could do that with any word processor, is to create a worksheet. You could have done this easily with WordPerfect, Word, Google Docs, anything you wanted. Just to create a couple items, put some pictures, and put in a little table. What becomes powerful is I'm going to select our data table and copy it. I'm now going to choose a second sheet. I'm going to go to the second sheet, and right on the top line, I'm going to paste. Notice it didn't keep my column width, so let's automatically adjust those really quickly. Now here's where the power comes in what you can do with Excel. I can not only adjust the width of my columns manually, I can also adjust the height of my rows. And I'm going to click in this. I had to double click to kind of get into that to be editing it. So I double clicked to get into that cell, and I'm now going to press the Alt button on my keyboard and the Enter key at the same time. So Alt, Enter, and I get a second line, and I'm going to type Group 1. And once I've done that, I can use this wonderful fill tool again, and notice it detected that I was probably creating a series. So I'm going to put in 3 groups, and I am going to double click my column widths so that those match, and it matched pretty much everything. It's looking really good. I noticed that these look slightly different, but I've got my items in there, which is just exactly what I wanted it to do. Oops. Sorry, my mouse is scrolling on me on accident. I want to come actually into this cell and do that same thing we did before and do Alt, Enter in order to get that on 2 lines the way the other one is. So you'll notice that this came in and it didn't come in the same 2-line format that we had. I can just adjust these 2 columns until it automatically adjusts, and we've got pretty much the same column widths. Another feature that you may have not noticed or known about Excel is you see how this has got that specific formatting we have with the lines and the numbers in it. If I want that to match, I can just click on any cell there, and then on the home ribbon there's a Format Painter button. This little paintbrush will allow me to basically, I've just dipped my paintbrush into that cell, and I can now paint that format onto all of these other cells. So I now have a really fantastic sheet where I can have my groups each enter in their data, and it'll calculate some things for me automatically. In this final column, I'm going to put in average. Oops. Now notice when I did that, Excel automatically detected that I was probably creating another heading, so it automatically put that in there. It did not do that with this column, and that's okay because I may want to recolor this column slightly differently anyway. But I'm going to type in a formula, a simple formula, equals average, and you notice it comes up with some suggestions, and then I can put in a parenthesis. The parenthesis starts our formula, and now I can just select the area that I want to create the average of. And you can see the format there, B2 colon D2 means everything from B2 through D2. So you can average non-standard spaces. You can actually use the Control key and click on non-adjacent cells, and it will pretty much anything you want it to average, it will average. You just have to let it know how to do it. Now I press the Enter key, and I have the average, which is just 40. But if I put in some more data, I get an average. You'll also notice that it's giving me more than the significant digits, but that's okay for our purposes. Or if I don't want that to display more than those digits, I can actually use these 2 buttons right here to decrease or increase the decimals. And let's just decrease it so we only are showing 1 decimal. This fill tool becomes our really good friend again because I can now fill down, and as I put in data, it will automatically calculate it. It automatically adjusts that formula to be the next row. So let's put in some more data here. And you notice that it's adjusting my average as I put in new data. Another part of this that can be kind of amazing is I'm going to highlight this column using my cursor, and we're going to insert another item. This time we're going to insert a line chart. This isn't exactly change over time, but it is change over a series. So now I have my average and a chart. And since I've put it in, even though I don't have the data in there yet, it's already detecting that that's where the data will go. And I can begin putting in my additional data. And as I do so, you'll notice it's giving me new information. So my chart is changing as I put in this new data and modifying it as appropriate. So that's kind of the basics of Excel and how to use some pretty simple things with it. I won't be able to go into all of the different tools and all the ways that they can be used. I will show you one last tool that can be very useful. This button here is an Autosum button. What it actually does is give you the most common used functions: sum, average, count numbers, maximum, and minimum. You also have more functions. If you select this, it will give you a display that will let you search for different functions, and if you use the resources that are available to you on Microsoft Office.microsoft.com, or you can search Microsoft Office, you'll find all kinds of resources that tell you how to use each of these different formulas for using and analyzing your data.